The chair recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, Ms. Stoloro, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just would like to follow up for 1 second with my colleague. This is the Appropriations Committee. We deal in amounts of money. A program, what is the amount? What's it going to do? How is it going to accomplish that? So far, we can't seem to get any information about budget detail, about what it is that you all are doing. It's a lot of great words, but what are dollars and cents? So I think you just have to keep in mind that we appropriate money based on needs and what the programs are, and then we make a decision as to whether or not we ought to be doing that or not. So please, get us information on the plan, the dollar amount, what you plan to do. Listen, your budget request, quite honestly, unleashes a catastrophe of evictions, homelessness, at an unbelievable scale. 750,000 of Americans experience homelessness on any given night. Cost of housing is out of control. Middle-class families, working families are being suffocated. Folks in this country today work paycheck to paycheck. One emergency or layoff from financial ruin, yet your budget eliminates critical lifelines that help to keep a roof over most people's heads in this nation. Let me just say, with regard to a question here, we have Ansonia, Connecticut, which I represent. Housing Authority is smaller, public housing authority. They want to expand programs, services, especially for seniors. Residents have lived in this Naugatuck Valley their whole lives. They don't have income to sustain their homes, but they lack affordable housing options. Based on recent national data, it's becoming clear that homelessness among seniors is rising. Some experts expect the trend will continue. People over age 50 used to make up 10% of the homeless population. Now it's close to half. A particularly vulnerable population with its own set of challenges. Over 2 million seniors rely on federal rental assistance to age in place. You are cutting HUD rental assistance by 43%. You propose to eliminate dedicated Section 202 housing for the elderly program, pushing more responsibility to states. Everyone on this committee knows the states don't have the wherewithal to be able to do this. There's no assessment of whether or not they have the capacity to manage. You propose completely upending homelessness programs. You are shifting to short and medium-term assistance with no funding for the type of permanent supportive housing that chronically homeless people with age-related infirmities need to achieve. We have a program in my district in Connecticut. It's a senior housing program called the Towers, and you have frozen their grant and not giving them the opportunity to deal with critical renovations to a 55-year-old building. Given housing affordability, homelessness crisis facing our seniors who already live on a fixed income, how are you justifying eliminating dedicated programs that support housing developments with on-site supportive services tailored to seniors' needs?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Dolores. So great to meet you, ma'am. And as I said in my opening statement, with this new budget proposal under the president's leadership, this will help us to more effectively serve the most vulnerable.
How?
Effectively serve elderly and
Answer
disabled.
my question.
Yes,
how?
ma'am.
What is the way in which you are going to deal and justify eliminating dedicated programs that support on-site supportive services tailored to seniors' needs? How are you doing that?
Working with the states, ma'am. And when I say working with the states, if I may, states understand their unique needs as it pertains to the elderly, as it pertains
to the program
to the disabled,
that will address that? What is the amount of money that is going to be required to do this? What portion of it will be federal? What portion will be state? What is the program?
Well, as you said, ma'am, you all are appropriators. You control the purse strings. My job is to maximize the budget that you do give me. And with maximize this budget, we will work with the states to identify, if you will, ma'am,
You
where
can't
those
have a
needs
budget,
are.
with all due respect. You cannot
Thank
have
you,
a
ma'am.
budget that doesn't have any numbers, that doesn't have any programmatic direction,
Ma'am, you
that
have the
doesn't
budget
tell
in
us
front
what
of
we're
you.
doing. But what is the specific program on seniors? What are you doing? You're eliminating elderly housing, Section 202, which has been in place for years. I worked for a city many years ago, and it was Section 202 in which we worked with providers to do this. You know, my time has run out, but zero programmatic information, zero details on the budget.
Ma'am, status
Ranking
quo is
members.
I would
done.
like to ask unanimous
We'll do
consent
it a
to put
different
my
way.
opening statement into the record because I couldn't be here for
Without
these.
objection.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The other committee that I have a leadership role on is the Senate Aging Committee. And you know how important housing is to our older Americans. Seniors are the fastest growing age group among people experiencing homelessness. Over 41,000 seniors aged 65 and older experienced homelessness at the time of the 2024 point-in-time count, and that number could triple by the year 2030. The budget, however, cuts HUD homeless assistance by 13%, and you propose strict time limits even for seniors. These are people with fixed incomes, can't work, face very increasing healthcare costs and challenges, and need wraparound services to stay housed. So, Mr. Secretary, under your proposal, what happens to the seniors currently being served in permanent supportive housing, and what's your ambition with regard to addressing homelessness amongst our older Americans?
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. I appreciate our conversation yesterday. And as you will note in the budget, the language in the budget prioritizes our seniors, our elderly and disabled, and our veterans. And so we are well aware of this. And at HUD, we will continue to prioritize our seniors. You know, you alluded to the homelessness in our country. And I want to make note for the committee, you know, with record funding from HUD, HUD's budget over the last 8 years went from approximately $42 billion to $77 billion. And yet homelessness is at an all-time high, went up 18% last year with over 770,000 people homeless at one single night in January of 2024. And when I look at this, obviously with this type of funding and with the role that we do have, that's unacceptable. As you know, I was just in New York City, visiting New York City and NYCHA, the public housing authority there, which has many problems as it pertains to stewardship, as it pertains to fraud and abuse, and authorities there, leadership there, being indicted. And, you know, homelessness, we've made it very hard for faith-based institutions to work with the government, to work with HUD in particular. And when I visit cities around our country and you see the faith-based institutions that are actually doing the work every day as it pertains to homelessness, we need to partner with these institutions, partner with the nonprofits that actually have data-driven results to decrease homelessness, to not only get people off the streets, but also to help people be transformed when you think about drug addiction, mental health, the restoration of the family, the faith. And so that's my approach to it, Senator, is to have a holistic approach and better stewardship, if you will, and to bring in these partnerships so that we can eradicate homelessness on our streets. But the budget language does prioritize our elderly and our disabled.
Thank you. And I would like to work with you on perhaps new legislative language about increasing the ability to do partnerships, faith-based partnerships. As I mentioned to you yesterday, there's a not-for-profit in the Bronx called the Fortune Society. And I would love you to tour that because they deal with formerly incarcerated men, which is a very critical population that are at risk for homelessness. Not only do they house them, they give them skills training, they give them mental health support, they give them any substance use disorder prevention that's necessary, and they holistically look at these individuals and say, how do we make sure that you get on your feet, that you have a great job and you can pay for your own housing, and what does it take to get you from the day you are released to the day you are self-sufficient? And I would love to work with you on legislation to accomplish those goals in whatever ways we can, because again, the failure of this country not to house Americans is painful, and we have to do a better job, and I'm open to all solutions, and I'd love to work with the chairwoman on that. The second issue that I raised with you that I wanted to raise for the committee is what do we do with all the buildings that are empty in cities like New York? There are so many commercial buildings that no one is going to work in anymore that are entirely unutilized. And I would like to work on legislation to provide conversions, to be able to create resources and also authorities so that we can make it easier to take empty buildings and transform them into critical housing needs. Now, the type of critical housing needs that I would make this eligible for is certainly for formerly homeless. I think we have to get out of the model that homeless people are going to shelters. They should be going to permanent housing with the transitional wraparound services like the Fortune Society offers for this one group of people, like some of the shelters offer for battered women and their children. So the kinds of services that get people on their feet so they can be self-sufficient. And there's going to be a lot of important things we need to look at to make conversions possible. And I also would like your commitment that you will work with me on that to get legislation written and supported to get the resources and the authorities to do that kind of work.
Yes, ma'am. I look forward to working with you on these two issues that you raised. Thank you.
Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, and thank you, Secretary. First of all, appreciate our team's working relationship as Maui continues.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clyburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me, if I consider, I'm not going to do football. I played the game, not at the level you played it, but I'm a pretty good golfer. And I know that if I've got 150 yards to get to the green, it doesn't matter what club I use. What matters is what skill I've got. That's what matters. And I always hear people say, what club do you use? What does it mean to you? You ain't the same as I am. So therefore, at soon to be 85 years old, it's going to cost me a little more with a 6-iron that's going to cost this young man over here. So get the right equipment. Now, so if you tell me that HUD has been ineffective, do you cure ineffectiveness by refocusing, or do you cure it by eliminating? So if you say, well, I've been ineffective, you eliminate the funds, how does that make HUD effective? Tell me about refocus.
Yes, sir. And I've heard that you're a great golfer. I do look forward to playing with you. Your 8-iron might be a different club than mine, but you're right, it is a skill. Mm-hmm. I'm reminded that during the previous administration, during COVID, with a $70 billion budget, sir, HUD hired 2,000 people during COVID, most of which stayed home. And there was continuous waste, fraud, and abuse. And so when you have that many people and still not carry out the job, and you have that much funding and still not carry out the job for the American people, then we have to refocus. And part of that refocus is take an inventory of staff, take an inventory of the budget, take an inventory where the budget is going. And currently in the programs we don't have a lot of purview, if you will, and transparency, if you will, where the money is going. Is it serving those it's supposed to be serving? And so part of this refocus is to bring that back to House and bring it to the states and say, now let's have more transparency, let's have more accountability. And so when I look at refocus and I look at the skill set, all of that to me is in the same bucket. When you look at your people, mm-hmm. Are you doing the job you've been called to do? Are you doing at the level you've been called to do it? And is there transparency in the process that we have? And at HUD, that's what they're doing. And sir, I said it in my confirmation process that we're going to take inventory of every program office at HUD. We're going to maximize the budget that we do have. And we're going to serve the people that we're supposed to be serving. So the amount of people, the amount of money, that's not the deal here. Because with the tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of people, we haven't, prior to us getting here, carried out the job that we've been called to carry out.
I agree with you, but I think that to deal with COVID is a false. This is a false narrative here. I chaired the select subcommittee for the coronavirus. I know where the fraud was, and it wasn't in housing. The billions and billions and billions of fraudulent money went to some pretty wealthy people, at least one of whom is in this administration right now. So That's not the criteria that we ought to use here. Let's look at what the needs are and how we need to equip ourselves for these needs. Now, you mentioned the Obama-Biden administration. If you want to cue what you see to be the problem of the Obama-Biden administration, why would you advocate the Andrew Johnson and the Woodrow Wilson administrations? And I use those two administrations because I disliked them immensely, and they were Democrats. So I want you to think this is partisan. Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat, and I think one of the worst presidents we ever had. So this is not partisan here. This is whether or not we're going to have a program to meet the needs of the American people, or whether we're going to just get rid of it, throw out the baby with the bathwater. And that's what you seem to be doing here. Half of the budget, and then you tell me you want to refocus the agency with what? With what equipment? The 5-iron, or you will leave it in the bag?
Well, I think it's the right equipment for the situation. And right now, prior to us being here, we haven't been using the right equipment for the right situation.
So what is the right equipment?
Well, the right equipment, sir, is called transparency. It's called inventory. It's called, let's refocus and let's have a new paradigm. And, you talk about the Biden-Obama administration, and I make note to them just because that's what, yes, sir, because that's where the rule came, not politics. And so, sir, I will assure you that my heart and my focus is on serving the American people, and we are refocusing in order to do that appropriately. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Espaillat, is recognized for 5 minutes. Mr. Espaillat, your mic, I think.
I think it's on now. Secretary, I want to ask you some basic questions. Do you consider that there is a homelessness crisis in America?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that there is a housing affordability emergency in America?
I do.
Mr. Secretary, is the rent too damn high in Washington, D.C.?
I believe it's high in a lot of places, sir.
So there is a homelessness crisis. There is an affordable housing emergency, and the rent is too damn high in many places across America. And so what does HUD do? What does this administration propose? A 51% cut on basic services for housing. Now, building housing is not a cheap endeavor. It's a deep pocket challenge anywhere in America. It's not cheap to build housing. It costs money. And so you're cutting 51% of the budget while you recognize that there is a homelessness crisis, there's an affordable housing emergency, and the rent is too damn high in America. Now, I represent a district that has probably the biggest concentration of NYCHA apartments. That's the New York City Housing Authority apartments in the city. Now, there's 570,000 people live in the city of New York under NYCHA. Now, you were born in Richardson, Texas. That town has 119,000 people. So NYCHA is 5 times the size of the city that you were born in. And they have a $78 billion deficit, a deep hole for capital needs, boilers, roof work, pointing work, faulty elevators, flooding, mold in the apartments, lead paint in the apartment. These are the conditions in NYCHA, a $78 billion hole for capital needs, and you're cutting the budget 51%. Now, I know that you're familiar.
Sir, can I add something?
I'll ask you a question in a
Okay, cool.
minute.
Thank you.
I know that you're familiar with some football terms. You said so in your testimony. So I'm going to just highlight some of the cuts. $27.2 billion, a 40% cut to rental and homeless assistance program. To me, that sounds like roughing the passer. a $2.2 billion or 71% cut to housing construction, supply, and preservation. That sounds to me like past interference. A $3.4 billion or 100% cut to economic development programs. To me, that sounds very much like a delay of game. A $254 million or 100% cut to self-sufficiency and pathways to home ownership programs. That seems that it's a false start. Mr. Secretary, you have engaged in personal foul on the American people. These cuts are severe, and they're going to exacerbate the homeless crisis. They're going to further throw into crisis the affordable housing emergency, and the rent is going to continue to be too damn high. You're cutting 51% of the budget. Housing is an expensive endeavor. It's no longer a cheap endeavor anywhere in America, anywhere in the world. Is a deep pocket issue, and people are sleeping on the street, and you're doing these cuts so that you can give money to people that sleep in mansions, that sleep in Fifth Avenue multi-million-dollar condos, that have lakeside houses and beachfront properties. That's what you're doing. You're not doing God's work. That's not God's work. 51% cut. That's devastating. That's a personal foul, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, and I yield back. I reclaim my time.
The referee may have to call a timeout moving forward.
Ma'am, can I answer? Can I answer this?
The gentleman has yielded his time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chair Hyde-Smith and Ranking Member Gillibrand, Secretary Turner. Welcome. Thank you for the chance to be with you today. I appreciated receiving, finally, your budget submission, and I look forward to getting to know you better and to work with you. I'll just mention right at the outset, Madam Chair, that my week had a positive start because I got to visit a project built by a faith-based organization from the Mennonite community to address youth aging out of foster care in a rural community known as Greenwood, Delaware. And I'm pleased, as are you, that the youth aging out of foster care program will be sustained. But I'm gravely concerned that several of the tools that were used to make that project work are not being continued. I was a county executive. I spent 6 years of my life working on housing. We were responsible for the second largest housing authority in my state. The housing authority didn't own any units. It was all private sector, private landlords, but working in partnership with us and with HUD. And I'm working on a bipartisan piece of legislation with Senator Kramer of North Dakota called the Choice in Affordable Housing Act. And it would make housing choice vouchers more accessible. It would do a better job of attracting and retaining private sector landlords to the program. It's got a wide range of groups involved in housing production, housing advocacy, supporting it. And I'd like you to commit to working with me on that legislation to see if we can make progress on improving the Housing Choice Vouchers program. Is that something you'd be willing to work with me on?
Thank you, Senator. It's great to see you, sir. And I do look forward to seeing the language and hearing from you and your staff and how we can work together. Obviously, the housing affordability is a top priority of mine, and taking care of American people and also people, to see people live lives of self-sustainability. And for the youth aging out of foster care, you know, I'm looking forward to working with this committee and also with the First Lady as we take care of our youth to make sure that they land on solid ground in the days ahead.
Well, you heard from Senator Gillibrand, and I'll repeat the same thing, a passion on my part for working on the conversion of formerly commercial buildings to residential buildings. I'm close with a developer in Delaware that's done that a number of times successfully. As Senator Gillibrand knows, it's very difficult to do. Some properties lend themselves to it easily. Some properties are almost impossible. We have a significant challenge nationally. We are not producing enough affordable housing. We're not producing enough housing in urban centers. We're not producing enough housing in rural areas. And taking underutilized or vacant commercial properties and appropriately transitioning them to housing for those who are either homeless, unhoused, or underhoused is another thing I'd love to work with you on. But I must say, just right off the top, that I looked at this budget. You are a person of faith, as are the rest of us on this panel. You share a commitment to caring for our vulnerable neighbors, the least of these. But this budget, Mr. Secretary, is not a serious proposal. It does not meet the urgent housing needs of our country. A 50% cut to all the programs at HUD would be devastating to families and goes well beyond right-sizing a bloated agency, which was your phraseology. I think it takes a chainsaw to programs that I've worked with for years and that I've seen help the neediest Americans. As county executive, I relied on the home program. I've worked closely with the SHOP Sweat Equity program. I've supported and worked closely with the Continuum of Care program, whether it's HOPWA or housing for the elderly or housing for persons with disabilities. The solution to eliminating all of these services and then rolling them up into a new block grant program, I will assert, Mr. Secretary, will simply shift the burden onto states and counties. States and counties will end up being forced to pick up services for people who will become newly unhoused. That may not be your intention, but it is certainly my intention to test and push and challenge some of the assumptions underlying this. The administration is shifting the burden onto states and counties for a lot of other programming, for food assistance, healthcare, education, and that will badly strain state and county budgets to also move housing affordability for seniors, for the disabled, for families with children. I think goes beyond streamlining HUD services, but leads to fewer people receiving services. Let me just talk a little bit more about CDBG and home. As county executive, home was absolutely critical to our working in partnership with local nonprofits, several of them faith-based. It required a non-federal match, a robust non-federal match. It allowed us to build affordable housing, especially for disabled folks in our county. It helped 44,500 individuals a year. Do you actually believe state and local governments have the ability to pick up the costs for services that will be shifted to them if all of these programs are eliminated?
Thank you, Senator. And I appreciate your perspective on everything, and thank you to your service, both locally and here nationally. Senator, HUD has record funding, and currently we're only able to serve 1 out of 4 eligible families with $77 billion. Mm-hmm. And I alluded to this before, and I will say again, we have to do something different because what we have been doing over these many years has not been working. Stewardship has to be a priority. There's a lot of waste, there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of abuse in our system. And we can't, when I alluded to saying, you can't keep running the same plays, what I mean there's the best teams that I've seen in my career are the teams that make adjustments. We can't keep running the same play because it's causing us to lose. Well, that's what I feel like in America today, in particular with HUD, we've been running plays that have caused us to lose. And so, sir, this is a different way of looking at things. It's a rethinking of how can we get states to have skin in the game. I do realize, I understand the responsibility that you speak of, but this is a way for states to identify their unique needs and then to distribute their funds as they see fit. They can identify those that have been successful and fund those. And so it's a way for the states to uniquely get involved, to be very deliberate and decisive of their stewardship. And so, sir, that's the paradigm that I'm talking about. That's the culture shift I'm talking about. It's a new way of looking at it, a new way of rethinking it. The home program, to be honest, over the last 33 years has built 1.3 million units. That's only 32 units a year. And it provides gap funding, but the other funding has been $185 billion. So I think we have to look at this in a different way and do it better.
Mr. Secretary,
Yes, sir.
with all due respect, I welcome and appreciate some fresh thinking or a new look, a new attitude, but cutting funding by 50%, cutting the HUD workforce by a third is not going to produce any significant increase in housing production. You can reorganize, you can right-size, you can reanalyze existing programs. I would reject the assertion that the home program, as administered in my county, was rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm not going to defend every home program in every county in America because I can't, but I know the ones I was responsible for. I met with the Delaware home builders earlier today. Many of the folks in the room I've known for decades. One of them is among the leading builders of quality, affordable multifamily housing in America. And they probably don't want me to quote them right now. But their comment was the staffing cuts that you've pushed through this agency, reducing by a third the total headcount, means that getting projects approved that have to have an approval, a sign-off on a mortgage or a sign-off on a project approval, their wait times have gone from months to projects not moving forward, falling apart. And they cited to me the potentially disastrous consequences for low-income housing tax credit projects, for home projects, for Section 232 and 202 projects, of having all the staff with experience and expertise managing these gone, and then all the funding shoved into one big pile and sort of pushed at the states to say, you come up with your priorities. In the room full of folks I just met with who have decades of experience building housing of all kinds, high-end, mid, low, multifamily, single-family, inner-city, rural. These are guys who represent the whole scope of the home building industry in my state. They were not optimistic that working together, we were going to generate more housing. And I'll say one last point on one comment, if I might. Senator from Rhode Island, senator from Hawaii, senator from Delaware. The idea that we're going to solve this problem by accessing federal lands, that doesn't build you one single unit of housing in my state. East Coast, there's not a whole lot of relevant vacant federal land. Right. And I dare say, although these are not my states or my geography, in states like, Wyoming or Montana or Utah, my hunch is the infrastructure cost to connect out to and build on available vacant federal land may not pencil out. Let me conclude. I'm way over, and I apologize, Madam Chair, but I was the last, so I figured I'd take a little moment. Thank you for what you've said today about the values you bring to this work and about working together to find the right balance. And thank you for your willingness to take on a challenging department at an important time. But bluntly, Mr. Secretary, I think we need to produce more housing, not less. And I look forward to working with you to try to find ways to do that in keeping with our charge of stewardship. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Without objection, this letter from the First Lady, Melania.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Watson-Coleman. You have 5 minutes, Ms. Coleman.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Secretary. You've said a lot today. You've not answered one question, but you're consistent. You've not answered the hows of the questions that the Republicans have asked, and you certainly haven't answered how you're going to make something happen on this side either. What I am concerned about is how you could even open your mouth and say that you care about this population or these populations when you're willing to come here and advocate for a 51% reduction in the budget. And so I want to go over a little bit of this stuff with you because I don't think you're refocusing. I think you're devastating. And this is a ludicrous proposal. I'm sure you know that 74% of Americans are concerned about housing and 771,000, you mentioned it, are currently homeless. I know you know that 7.6 million, including 2.9 million children, are facing the threat of eviction. I know that this budget does not usher us into any alleged golden age, but perhaps a gilded age. I am unsure how you and this administration arrived at the decision to cut HUD by 51%, specifically $45.6 billion during a period of rising homelessness and housing insecurity. And I want to remind you that 4 years ago, you were here. You and the administration are going to try to sell the American people a story that these cuts are justified, and you give it while you want to give your money back to very wealthy donors. It's my job to show the American people that these are unjustifiable cuts, and so here, let us go with this. A 40% cut to rental and homeless assistance programs totaling $27.25 billion. A $53 billion cut to Section 8 rental assistance. An $8.8 billion cut to public housing. A $1.2 billion cut to Sections 202 and 811 programs for the elderly and disabled. A $505 million cut to HOPWA. A $22 billion cut to HUD's housing, construction, supply, and Preservation Program, a $1.25 billion cut to the home program. You care about home ownership? I don't think so. A $75 billion cut to the Choice Neighborhoods Program, a $12 million cut to the SHOP program, a $6 million cut to rural capacity building grants, a $10 million cut to the Price program, a $296 million cut to the lead hazard reduction and healthy home programs grant, a $3.3 billion cut to community development block grants, a $100 million cut to pro-housing, a $196 million cut to family self-sufficiency programs, a $58 million cut to housing counseling, a $101.4 million cut to fair housing. Now, Secretary, I'm sure you know that these cuts will successfully increase housing instability, and evictions. I'm sure you know that those facing evictions don't have a right to counsel. I am sure you also know that your budget is making massive cuts to legal aid for those facing evictions and homelessness. So I'm sure you know that cutting rental assistance, eliminating fair housing protections, and defunding legal aid will not reduce homelessness and eviction in this country. I am sure you're aware that you are worsening the housing crisis with your budget proposal. If you really believe that you would not slash your agency's budget by over 50%. And by the way, you talk about giving the authority back to the states. You want to give them authority, but you don't want to give them resources. You can't do anything with your rhetoric and your narrative. You got to show with your actions and with your resources. And last but not least, I want you to tell me what DEI contracts you have terminated. What does that mean? Did you terminate contracts to veterans? Did you terminate contracts to disability organizations? Did you terminate contracts to Black contractors? Did you terminate to Latino or Asian or whatever? What the heck are you talking about eliminating DEI contracts in HUD? Who's your population? Who should you be looking after? It is shameful, and you ought to be ashamed of being here. You don't have to answer any question because you haven't answered one yet.
Ms. Vice Chairman, I would actually like to answer her.
I yield back. I don't need you.
Okay, thank you, Congress Lady. You know, and thank you for stating all the stats of our budget. We really appreciate that because it just reiterates my point that with record funding, HUD has still not carried out its most basic mission. And I have
Don't
answered
act like
questions.
you haven't been here, sir. Just 4 years ago, you were here.
Ms.
Don't act
Ms.
like
Watson
you
Coleman,
care
if
about
you let
this
him,
population.
Ms. Watson Coleman, if you'll let him answer the question,
I
your
don't
time
need,
has
I
expired.
listen, I reclaimed my time back. I yielded my time. You wouldn't let him waste your time, you let him.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And thank you, Ms. Watson Coleman, thank you for reiterating my point that status quo is not good enough, that also homelessness has gone up in spite of record funding. And
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
And congratulate not only you, but Ranking Member Warren on your selections to lead this important committee. I look forward to working with you on the important housing needs of Georgians. Mr. Turner, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
And welcome not only to you, but also to your family. I enjoyed our conversation earlier this week. I often tell people that I am a product of good public policy. I think about that often. I've worked hard, but I wouldn't be sitting where I am, where I'm sitting without some help, some ladders. Good public policy. I grew up in public housing, and I understand the security and dignity that housing provides children and families. Mr. Turner, do you believe home ownership provides dignity, security, and access to generational wealth?
I do.
Thank you so much. I agree. And unfortunately, during the first Trump administration, President-elect Trump repeatedly proposed to slash HUD's budget, including cuts and the full elimination of key HUD programs that help people afford rent and realize the dream of home ownership, which you and I agree is so important. If enacted, these cuts would have raised housing costs for millions of American families. Last time, Congress stepped in year after year to save many of these programs. This time, I'm not so sure that we'll be able to do it. Mr. Turner, if confirmed, will you commit to being a voice in the administration against severe cuts to HUD's budget at a challenging time, including programs that help people afford rent and home ownership?
Thank you, Senator. What I do commit to, you and your colleagues in Congress, you hold the purse strings. Obviously, the president presents his budget, appropriations. They present the budget, and you all vote on it, and the president signs it into law. My job and my goal, if confirmed by the committee, obviously, is to maximize that budget, to meet the needs of the American people, and to carry forth the programs at HUD. And so I do commit that to you.
Will you be a voice to hold the line to protect programs that provide the dignity of home ownership and make rent affordable for working class people, for poor
I do commit to having those conversations with the president and with Congress as it pertains to being an ambassador and a voice for HUD and to maximize the budget that we are given to make sure those programs are efficient and meeting the needs of the American people. I do commit that to you.
All right. I know you can be a voice. You're a preacher. They didn't mention that. Everybody's talking about the football player.
And we only have 2 minutes. And you ain't even got to your second point.
And you're a preacher and elected official, both of us, so loquacious of speech.
Yes.
But this is a serious issue because the racial home ownership gap has been widening over the last few years. Yesterday, we celebrated Dr. King's actual birthday. Monday is the holiday. And folks often talk about those 2 key civil rights bills, the Accommodations Law in 64, Civil Rights Laws, Voting Rights Law in 65. We don't talk enough about fair housing. That is a victory of Dr. King's. That law was signed into law just a few days after his assassination. Right. But that is a result of his work. The first Trump administration sought to weaken and even rescind landmark fair housing laws pushed through by Dr. King. If confirmed, you would be responsible for enforcing these fair housing laws. If confirmed, will you commit to vigorous enforcement of the nation's fair housing laws? Yes or no?
Yes.
And would you be a strong voice in the administration in favor of protecting existing fair housing laws from efforts to weaken them or to roll them back?
I do commit to upholding the fair housing laws, yes, sir.
So one of the overlooked drivers of racial wealth inequity within our housing system is the very well-documented pattern of lenders and the appraisal market persistently assessing the value of black and brown homes lower than white homeowners. You and I discussed this a little bit the other day in my office. And my staff sent you some background information and data on appraisal bias. This is real money, hurting real people. In part at my urging, the Biden administration took steps to crack down on appraisal bias with HUD leading an interagency effort. If confirmed, will you commit to continue to use HUD's tools and authorities to crack down on appraisal bias, including by continuing to provide consumers with data to push back on suspected bias?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for the information that you sent. I have begun to read, and I look forward to exploring that more with you. And as I said before, I do commit to upholding the law as it is on the book against all illegal discrimination.
Including appraisal bias.
We will continue to look into that, and I look forward to working with you on that and become more well-studied. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I hope you will continue HUD's important work on this matter, even as we go into this weekend of celebrating Dr. King's birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Senator. And next will be Senator Brooks.
First, I'd like to say thank you to Chair Scott and Ranking Member Warren for your leadership on this committee, for today's hearing, and for the privilege to serve on this committee. The Banking Committee has jurisdiction over many important issues for Marylanders, including housing, transit, and access to capital. I look forward to working with both of you and all of our colleagues on this committee to address the economic challenges facing our nation. To Mr. Turner, congratulations to you and to your family on your nomination. And thank you for your willingness to serve as our Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I know the moment is short. I've been warned already, and so I would just request, if possible, a simple yes or no to some of the following questions. First of all, your role will be important as we seek to bring down prices and expand economic opportunity for every American. And I want to highlight two very important programs. We recognize that economic opportunity is directly tied to housing affordability for people of all income levels. First, two programs you've heard about already, the HUD programs, in particular, Community Development Block Grant, as well as the Home Investment Partnerships Program. In 2024, Maryland received $52 million through CDBG funding, as well as $18 million through the Home Investment Partnership Program in 2024. The Home Investment Partnership Program in particular is the department's flagship program and the only federal block grant that is dedicated exclusively to the production of affordable housing for low-income households. As you know, the housing shortage has been one of the most persistent contributors to inflation. And like the rest of the country, Maryland faces an affordability crisis and is short nearly 100,000 housing units. The previous Trump administration has repeatedly proposed cuts to HUD's budget. Will you oppose funding cuts to CDBG and home programs?
Thank you, Senator. And I'm sorry that we didn't get an opportunity to meet, albeit, it was a scheduling conflict, but I'm happy to meet you today. What I will commit to is looking at these programs and to maximize the budget. As you know, Congress holds the purse strings to the budget. My job, if confirmed as Secretary, is to maximize that budget, to meet the needs of our country, to serve those we've been called to serve. And so I do commit to that.
Thank you. But you will have an opportunity, if you're confirmed as Secretary, to oppose cuts to these important programs. And so my question is, would you oppose cuts to these two important programs?
What I'll do is I will work with the President, I will work with Congress, and I will work with this team to make sure that the budget that we do have meets the needs of those that we are commissioned to serve.
The affordable housing crisis affects Americans of all demographics in red states and blue states. And so will you commit to working with and consulting Congress on a bipartisan basis?
Yes, I believe working with Congress is very important, and to be transparent with Congress is very important. So yes, I do commit with working with you all if confirmed by the committee.
Thank you. Now, former Trump administration HUD Secretary Ben Carson, whom you've called a mentor, has called for placing political appointees rather than career experienced officials and many apolitical senior HUD leadership roles. Do you agree with this approach?
What I do agree with that, as being a leader, you have to go look at your team holistically. And if confirmed by this committee, I do plan on looking at the team at HUD to see who and what we have and making sure that we have the best team in place to carry out the mission of HUD. I've been on a lot of teams in my life, and I've also been cut from teams, so I understand what that means. But at the end of the day,
if I can, and I'm sorry because the hour is short, you don't want me, in other words, on your football team if I don't have experience on the basis of my political affiliation. So the question is just, would you prioritize political affiliation over experience?
What I will do is get the best qualified people for the job.
Okay. And finally, on a federal workforce question, Maryland is home to more than 135,000 federal workers who work hard every day. And the official Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, has proposed laying off 75% of government workers. Do you support firing 75% of HUD employees?
What I do support is encouraging people to do the job that they've been called to do. But also, I don't want to encourage people to do something I'm not willing to do. I will take the lead in that. And again, having the best people at the right time to do the job is my goal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Turner, very much. I want to welcome your family, too.
Thank you, sir.
No one serves alone, and you're going to be supported by these wonderful people. We have a severe supply problem in housing, and that's why I'm a little bit surprised that in the president's elect's last budget, he wanted to zero out the home program and the housing trust fund. These are programs that have sole purpose is to construct housing. And so what will we get by eliminating these programs if our need is to invest more in construction?
Well, thank you, Senator Reed. So good to see you, and thank you for your time yesterday. As I've said before, Senator Reed, to your colleagues, it is my goal to look at the Housing Trust Fund and all the programs at HUD and to see how they are helping us to better do the job and carry out the mission at HUD as a whole.
Well, thank you very much. Let me also talk about another program. That's the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, one that I'm working closely with Senator Britt to try to expand. As we talked about, this is a very good program. It allows families in subsidized housing to put money aside to eventually move on, and we hope to buy their own homes. Will you help us expand FSS as you are in the position as the HUD Secretary?
Thank you, Senator. And if confirmed by your committee, any program that is helping people on the road to self-sufficiency and climb the economic ladder and become to thrive economically, I'm willing to look at, to work with you in this committee on. And thank you for your passion for that and your diligence in that, because my goal, too, is to help people to get off of government assistance and to be self-sustainable and achieve the American dream.
Thank you. Let me follow on a point that Senator Tina Smith made. That is, you know, we have problems with veterans housing, and we have to do much more. But remarkably, we've made more progress with veterans housing than any other population. From 2007 to 2023, veterans homelessness dropped 50%. Okay. And that's because it's not just HUD, but it's HUD. It's also VA with vouchers. It's also building. So can you look at that model that's been successful and see how you can incorporate more of it to affect other populations besides veterans?
Yes, sir. And we said earlier, you know, when you bring ideas to the table and you have data-driven, results-driven programs, I'm willing to look at all of those to see how we can better serve not only our veterans, but the whole entire mission of HUD. And so I look forward to working with you and your team and members on that.
And I know you've talked about, and we had a good chance to talk about it in the office, about streamlining regulations, zoning. That is a responsibility primarily of states and localities, but HUD, I think, can play a critical role, and I hope you will follow up aggressively to in that critical role.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't know if you can say anything, but are you thinking go Commanders?
Anything Commanders, Redskins, I'm for it.
All right. We can agree on that.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for that great quote you gave me in the office. It's not about the best ideas, but who asked the best questions. I remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. The other one is be kind and no surprises.
Yes, sir.
I will say that between Senator Warner and Senator Tillis, giving time back is a blessing. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Scott,
Yes, sir.
Turner. Mr. Turner, good to see you, and it was great to sit down with you yesterday. I appreciate the opportunity, and let me just say that to me, it shows excellent judgment that a man from Texas would come to play for what was then the Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders. And I will point out to my colleagues, and I know Senator Cornyn had to leave, but in the last game that we played, the Commanders played against the Cowboys. Commanders won, and they're in the playoffs. And all of us in Maryland are hoping for a Ravens-Commanders Super Bowl. All right, that's what we're all rooting for. Okay. So let me just address some of the issues we discussed yesterday. And I mentioned in our meeting that Senator Todd Young and I have introduced a bipartisan legislation entitled the Family Stability and Opportunity Vouchers Act, which would create housing vouchers targeted on families with young kids and enable them to move to areas of higher opportunity. There's lots of research that shows that helps break the cycle of poverty and create more generational wealth in income. The legislation we've introduced is based on a pilot program that we launched in legislation that was signed by President Trump the last time he was in the Oval Office. And the early signs from the pilot program have been so encouraging, we went ahead and introduced a full piece of legislation. So I'd really like to move forward on that and just ask if you are confirmed whether you will work with us to advance that legislation.
Sorry. Yes, sir, Senator, and it was great to visit with you. And yes, I do look forward to working with you.
So let me address another area that we talked about, which is the cost of housing. I think all of us recognize we have an affordable housing crisis in the United States of America. You agree with that, right?
Yes, sir.
And obviously some of the inputs to housing are the materials. We talked about how you have a multi-family housing business, and when I asked you what were the primary drivers of increased costs, one of the first thing you said was the costs of actually building the home and the materials, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So I want to talk to you about those inputs, because obviously lumber is a huge cost for housing. And the previous Trump administration increased tariffs on lumber. The current Biden administration kept them on and raised them a little further. I think they're now about 15%. Would you agree that it would make housing more unaffordable if we further increased tariffs on lumber?
Well, you know, that's the president's job, and I know he's going to do everything he can to bring costs down.
No, I mean, this is sort of math. I'm just asking you, there are lots of factors here, but would you agree that if you increase the tariffs on lumber, which is a major input to the cost of housing, that increases the cost of housing?
Well, I think there's a lot of increase to the cost of housing. I don't want to get into the tariffs conversation, because obviously that is not my job. That's the president, and your job is Congress. But what I want to do is combat anything that raises the cost of housing, be it the cost of construction, be it fees, be it regulatory burdens. That's what I'm focused on, Senator, to bring those things down.
Right. No, I appreciate that. You know, if you're confirmed you're going to be Secretary of Housing, and affordable housing will be part of your portfolio, a major part of it, and obviously you'll be at the cabinet meetings if confirmed. And so I hope you will pass on to the president, as he considers these things, the impact that will have. Look, I support targeted tariffs to protect strategic U.S. industries. I mean, that's a very important thing.
Right.
But a broad-based set of tariffs across all sorts of goods that we're importing obviously drives up costs to Americans, just like it drives it up for housing. And there's another area of housing that includes gypsum. By the way, we produce some gypsum in the United States, but we also import a lot of gypsum, including through the Port of Baltimore. That's another area. If President Trump is talking about increasing tariffs across the board for Americans by 10 to 20%, won't those tariffs on gypsum and other things also raise the cost of housing and make it less affordable?
Senator, I do commit to you to having these conversations, if confirmed by this committee, with the president, because obviously affordable housing, if I'm the Secretary of HUD, will be my responsibility. So I do commit to having these and more conversations on how we can bring costs down in our country so that we can build affordable housing. So I do commit that to you, sir.
I appreciate that, and again, this is a simple mathematical proposition, and if we're serious about affordable housing, we can't have across-the-board tariffs in an unstrategic way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Turner, I want to ask you about why housing costs are so high. You recently said there is, quote, an ever-growing need for high-quality, affordable housing in our nation. Experts have said, as the chairman said, we need about 7 million new housing units in America. Now, there are a lot of explanations for our housing shortage. Local zoning and land use restrictions can make it harder to build homes. The cost of capital, which has been made worse by the Fed's decision to keep interest rates high, makes it even more difficult both to build and to buy housing. And there are places where the federal government can help. Take the HOME program. HUD gives grants to states and localities to help build and preserve affordable housing, and it works. In its history, HOME has supported the development of more than 1 million affordable units nationwide, including more than 100,000 homes in your home state of Texas. Mr. Turner, in 2023, you said that, quote, "It is more expensive than ever to build, and developers need access to more capital." Do you support additional federal investment in programs so that we can lower the cost of building affordable housing?
Thank you, Senator Warren. I appreciate our visit together, and thank you for your time in this. As you said, there are many factors to why housing is so expensive now. And I believe first we have to get our fiscal house in order in our country. Interest rates are at an all-time high. Inflation is at an all-time high.
Fair enough, Mr. Turner, but
Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to focus, because it is a big problem, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but the chairman's going to be tough on time. And that is, I just want to make sure I understand. Do you support additional federal investment in programs so that we can lower the cost of building affordable housing?
Thank you, Senator Warren. What I do support is maximizing the budget that we do have and making sure that the money.
So is that a no to additional investments?
It's a yes to maximizing the investment that we have and making sure that the programs that we do have are meeting the intended need and serving those that are intended to serve.
Well, I have to say that gives me real pause. You know, we just established that we have a terrible gap of affordable housing, and we have a program here that has helped close that gap. State and local governments, I understand, bless them, they're doing what they can, but they don't have enough money to match the scale of the problem nationwide. And what I'm looking for is a commitment that we're at least going to try to get some more help to the state and local communities that are trying to build affordable housing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I do look forward to looking at the home program and other programs. But my point, there's record funding from HUD. HUD's budget is nearly $70 billion at this point, and we're still not meeting the need that we're supposed to be meeting.
Which might mean that we need more money
I think we need to take
there.
inventory.
Let me,
and
if I
maximize the
can,
budget.
turn to another
Yes,
another topic. You know, unfortunately, there are some people who are trying to take advantage of our housing shortage instead of trying to fix it. Private equity firms and corporate landlords have moved into local housing markets, and they have driven up costs even higher for families. In 2011, no single investor anywhere in America owned more than 1,000 single-family homes. By 2022, just 5 investors collectively owned nearly 300,000 homes. And in fact, in your home state of Texas in 2021, big investors moved in, and they bought a whopping 28% of all homes that went on the market. So, Mr. Turner, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, recently said, quote, "Corporate large-scale buying of residential homes seems to be distorting the market and making it harder for the average Texan to purchase a home." Do you agree that it is a problem if big corporate investors are beating out families to try to buy homes?
Thank you, Senator. And I haven't seen that statement from Governor Abbott, but I do look forward to looking at this issue and even working with you and your staff on this issue. I believe that we do have a housing affordability crisis in our country. The more capital we get into the market, the better. And obviously, we want the right people, qualified people to invest. And the stats that I saw, Senator, said about 2% of institutional investors own these single-family homes. And so if I'm confirmed by this committee, I look forward to digging into this more with you so that we can look at this issue together.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, we've got to be laser focused on lowering the cost of housing for families.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Senator Rounds.